Alright, notes 12.1. Truth and validity and logical arguments. So some of the vocabulary we've talked about, argument, conclusion, premise, a valid argument, an invalid argument, a valid conclusion, an invalid conclusion. An argument is simply a sequence of statements in logic. So arguments, it's a sequence of statements in logic. If at any time you need to pause to write everything down, just pause it and write it down. You can wait for me to finish all of the seven vocab words and then write them all down together and just listen for right now. If you need to pause it, write them down, feel free to. For a conclusion, our conclusion, this is the final statement of an argument. So when we're making our argument, our if-then statement, the conclusion is the final statement. It's what comes at the very end. Our premise, these are the statements that come before a conclusion in an argument. So whatever we're saying before the conclusion, these are our premises. A valid argument is an argument where the premise forces a logical conclusion. So we have our premise, and it gives us a logical conclusion. An invalid argument is an argument where the premises does not force a logical conclusion. A valid conclusion is a conclusion of a valid argument. So our valid conclusion, it's the conclusion of a valid argument. So if we have a valid argument, we will have a valid conclusion. An invalid conclusion will be the conclusion of an invalid argument. So if we present an invalid argument, we will get an invalid conclusion. So these are our 7 vocab words we're going to be dealing with truth and validity. Now, valid or invalid. So if we take a closer look at our arguments, valid or invalid. If an animal is an amphibian, then it is a vertebrate. Well, frogs are amphibians. Therefore, frogs are vertebrates. Well, our symbols here, well, we have a premise, which is if P, then Q. So this is going back to using our letters. So this means if P, then Q. Well, we have P. We're given that we have frogs. There we go. So we have P, which are the frogs. Or we have an animal, which is a frog, and it's an amphibian. So therefore, we're going to get Q. So is this valid? Yes, because all of the premises are true, therefore the conclusion is true. So we have a frog's an amphibian, so it's going to give us a valid conclusion. So if we look at the second one, if Ken has Chipotle for lunch, he is happy. Ken is happy. Therefore, Ken had Chipotle for lunch. Well, our symbols, if P, then Q. But this time, we have Q. We don't have P, we have Q. Our conclusion is P. So if P, then Q. Well, we have Q, so therefore we have P. This conclusion does not follow our premises, alright? Even though they may be true, Ken could be happy for another reason. Ken might be happy because he got an A on his test. So the premises are true, but they don't follow each other. So if P, then Q, well, we have Q, but that doesn't give us P. If we have P, then we have Q. Now, there's 4 main types of arguments that we're going to be working. The first one, modus ponens, also called MP for short. Now, this is a valid conclusion. If P, then Q. So if you have P, you have to have Q. So if P, then Q. Well, we have P, so therefore we have to get Q. Modus tollens. This is also a valid conclusion. This is also known as MT. If P, then Q. Well, if we don't have Q, then we don't have P. So if P, then Q. Well, if we don't have Q, we can't have P. We have affirming the consequent, which is invalid, which is if P, then Q. Well, if we have Q, then we have P. That is invalid because Q could happen for a whole nother reason. Doesn't have to happen for P. And then the last one is denying the antecedent, which is also invalid, which is if P, then Q. If we don't have P, therefore we don't have Q, that's invalid because just because we don't have P doesn't mean we can't have Q. So just because we don't have P doesn't mean we can't have Q. And we're going to take a little bit closer look at these 4 different ones. Alright, so we're going to take a look at each type of argument. We want to read it. We want to test the validity. We want to write the symbolic representation. And we're going to determine the name of the argument. So when we look at this, a valid argument. If cows moo, then sheep baa. Well, cows moo, therefore sheep baa. Well, with our Euler diagram, we know that the if part, which is if cows moo, so we know that cows moo, then sheep baa. So if cows moo, then sheep baa. Well, if P, then Q. So our P is the if cows moo. The Q is the sheep baa. So that's how we get if P, then Q. Well, it's saying that cows moo. So this is our cow that goes moo. Cow goes moo. Okay? So it's saying we have P. Therefore, if this cow moves, then this sheep has to go baa. So that means if P, then Q, well, we have P, therefore we have to have Q. So this argument will be modus ponens, also known as MP. The next one. If you smoke, then you smell. You don't smell, therefore you don't smoke. Well, this is you smoke, and then you smell. Once again, this is our P. If you smoke, then you smell. Okay? So, if P, then Q. So if you smoke, then you smell. That's our if P, then Q. You don't smell. Well, so we don't smell, so we are out here somewhere. They don't smell. They took a shower and don't smell. So therefore, they don't smoke. Well, they're on a whole different level over here. So they don't smoke. That's our negation sign. We don't smell. So therefore, if we don't smell, we cannot smoke. So that's how we come up with our next one, which is modus ponens, also MT for short. Now if we look at the next one, if teachers talk, then students sleep. Teachers don't talk. Therefore, students don't sleep. Well, if the teacher talks, teachers talk, then students sleep. So once again, this is our P, and this is our Q. So if P, then Q. Well, teachers don't talk. Well, the teachers don't talk. Well, this teacher's not talking right here. So they're not talking, but the students can still sleep. So if the teacher doesn't talk, the students don't sleep, well, they can still sleep. So that is why this is invalid. And that is affirming the consequence. Why that is invalid. Because just because a teacher's not is talking, the students aren't going to sleep. They could sleep for some other reason. And then the last one, if you hear thunder, then it will rain. It's raining, therefore you heard thunder. Well, if you hear thunder, that's going to go inside. This is the thunder. And then the rain's on the outside. Here's our P, then your Q. So if P, then Q. It's raining. Well, we have Q. Whoops. We have Q, it's raining. So here's our Q. So we have our rain, but it doesn't have to thunder. So this is invalid. Because it rains plenty of times and we don't hear thunder. So this is invalid, and this is the last one. And now tomorrow when we come in, we will work on some more of these arguments and figure out if they're valid or invalid.